So in just a moment, I'm going to invite our good friend and colleague, Corey Best, to the stage. And as I was preparing to think about my remarks of what I was going to say, Corey's been working with the Prevent Child Abuse America team for the past few months as we really think about our own personal, professional, and organizational commitments to social justice and our intentional path forward for how we're going to engage in this work. And I was talking to Corey this morning about the run of show, and he said, "You're not going to read my bio." And I said, "Well, I had it in my notes." And he said, "I don't want that. I want something from here." So I will say that, I've known Corey on and off for a couple of years now. We see each other at conferences. We exchange conversation about our kids, about being fathers, what that's like for us. But I will say, when you have an experience, and I know that especially our HFA folks will understand this, when you are in community with somebody, when you're sitting with somebody who offers the opportunity to hold space for you to find new depths of yourself, to find that container where it's safe to be able to be vulnerable, to be able to commit to new things, that's a special thing. I feel like I'm leaving this conference. When Corey ended our time the other day, one of the things he said, "I'm not closing the loop for you today. That's your work moving forward." Dang it, Corey, you didn't close my loop for me. And I'm leaving this conference not feeling settled. What I'm feeling are a lot of questions. What I'm feeling is a lot of work that I need to personally do. And I thank you for holding the space and being that container to be able to make that happen. So without further ado, please let me welcome Mr. Corey Best.
Thank you, Bart. I have 10 minutes. For those of you who know me are probably laughing. But first I was asked the question, last night at the reception, how am I enjoying it? And, what am I walking away with? And so when we were talking about these 10 minutes, Bart said, why don't you just offer a few observations and challenges and how you were impacted. And as I attempted to answer that question last night about am I enjoying it, my inclination, my impulse was to take the easy way and say, yeah, it's very good, gathering with folk. But Mining for Gold has interacted with and my dear colleague, Tiffany Zonka, and I from Mining for Gold, we've interacted with 47% of 1,200 people over the past few days. 126 somatic experiences, 36 folk we had one-on-one conversations with. We interacted through the booth with 125 people, and we shook hands, hugged, or gave the old 50 years of hip-hop head nod. And through that, I'm affirmed, I'm reminded, and I'm anchored in a few things. To get back to if I enjoyed it, I don't know yet. I'm challenged, but I know what I came here to do. I came here to do something that my peoples and my people's peoples did for me, and that was to nurture freedom dreams. And in order to nurture freedom dreams, I realized that I needed a certain body and a certain voice to really, really hear me. And this was the bodies of people who have been most marginalized and most oppressed and most discriminated with. And I felt that. I felt that black bodies that I engaged with felt this level of devalving, felt this level of affirmation, felt love. Because here in this container, we as the proverbial helpers, I recognized that we forget that we need help too. And it was amazing to me to know that we are all in a principled struggle. And so as I think about the principled struggle and to nurture freedom dreams, it goes as this. We struggle for the sake of deepening our collective understanding and getting to greater unity. We are not battling just to be right or to make others wrong. We're not trying to colonize the space with our ideas or pontification. We want to understand each other, and fundamentally, we want to build a bigger we from which we can advance our movements toward justice. Some of those observations, Bart, from the 2 questions that were asked at the booth. What do you say yes to when it comes to racial justice and liberation? Before I give you what your colleagues and you said, I want you to take 2 seconds and breathe in liberation. Breathe in freedom. Think about when you've glimpsed that, what it feels like in your body. And now I want you to walk away from this conference asking yourself this question, because I'll start with this question and I'll end with another. What has racism cost you? Think about that. And so to what are you saying yes to? The themes were supporting each other, connecting, belonging, helping, open heart and mind, advancing justice, loving one another. What is your furthest imagination and vision of success? Love popped up 6 times. Freedom, having choices, justice, peace, discipline. And then this is where I got challenged. Because if Melissa says to us to understand that childhood lasts a lifetime, I believe I heard also that childishness doesn't have to. And if kids are to be well, how might they be well if their parents aren't? And so some things that were absent for me through my interacting with 47% of 1,200 folk were communal safety, safety for parents, safety for families, not only children. And the question that I asked myself as a result of these 3 days of gathering to nurture freedom dreams, and this is anti-racism all I want to become? What else might I need to imagine to ensure that justice is prevention? Because along with that, I'm not even sure if prevention is big enough for what I felt in this environment. I think that there is something bigger there. And I want to ask you to dream accountability as I walk away. Dream accountability. What if accountability wasn't scary? Take a breath and let that sink in for a second. If I start talking fast, like 50 Cent says, I'm going to ask you to start listening faster. It will never be easy or comfortable, but what if accountability wasn't scary? What if our own accountability wasn't something that we ran from, but something that we ran toward, desired, appreciated, held sacred? What if we cherished opportunities to take accountability as precious opportunities to practice liberation, to practice love, to practice the kinds of people, elders to be, and souls we want to be, to practice that which can only be practiced in real time? After all, we can only practice courage when we are afraid. We can only practice taking accountability when we have wronged or harmed or hurt. Practice yields the sharpest analysis. We can start with our own self-accountability and the ways that we do not show up for ourselves. We can acknowledge how most of us are in an abusive relationship with ourselves. We blow past our own boundaries. We push and beat ourselves up in terrible ways. We can start with the ways that we treat and talk to ourselves, the way that we would clearly recognize as abuse if it were being done to another person. After all, our abusive relationships with the world starts with the abusive relationships with ourselves. What if we ended accountability as a reflection of our undeniable, incredible, tender humanity, as a magnificent example of what it means to be human, flawed, and in relationship with one another? What if we welcomed the quickening of our pulse, the beating of our hearts as signals of being alive and caring, and what is most important to us, our relationships with each other? What if we listened to that fear of losing something important to us or of losing ourselves? What if we understood that the harms we've caused and have been a part of, not as things that do not need to be tended to or things that will blow over or forgotten about in time, but instead as one small part of a collective gaping wound that we have taught to pretend away, that sits in the middle of our hearts and relationships, our families, our movements, our country, our world? What if we all understood our parts individually, collectively, in that collective gaping wound? What if we could understand that in a violent and oppressive world, the work of love is never done? What if accountability wasn't rooted in punishment, revenge, or superficiality, but rooted in our values, growth, transformation, healing, freedom, and liberation? What if the work of accountability was held so sacred, so supremely sacred, that the people who got to practice it, truly practice it, were considered lucky, and those who had the honor of supporting it and witnessing it were also changed for the better from its power? What if we stopped romanticizing transformation and genuinely understood that transformation requires a death and a birth, a letting go and a starting anew? What if we spent more time practicing accountability, not just talking about it? So often we want other people to be accountable. But what if we practice our own accountability more? What if we started with the small things and built up our skills for the big things? What if we remembered that addressing the small things between us to prevent the big things from happening? What if we could talk with each other about the things we're trying to be more accountable for? What if we built relationships? What if we built relationships where we could have nuanced conversations about accountability, shame, fear, guilt, embarrassment, insecurity, trauma, and healing? What if we took more time to dream accountability, what it could be and the kind of magic it could grow? What we need in order to practice it more and better, both individually and collectively? What if accountability was so normalized, so everyday, so run-of-the-mill, that it was second nature, that it was our default, that it was something that everyone knew about and could easily pass a group of children and youth at any age, casually talking about it? Accountability. What if accountability wasn't scary? It will never be comfortable. It will never be easy. But what if it wasn't scary? What if our own accountability wasn't something we ran from, but something we ran toward and desired and appreciated and held as sacred? What if we cherished opportunities to take accountabilities as precious opportunities to practice that word you just inhaled, liberation, and to practice love? So to the answer to the question, did I enjoy it? Bart, the loop is still open. Thank you.
Practicing accountability, that loop is still open.